Imagine for a moment that the air around you is not empty, but threaded with invisible currents, some warm and nourishing, others cold and grasping. Picture your body not merely as flesh and bone, but as a luminous vessel, pulsing with an energy that extends beyond the skin, weaving into the world like a delicate web of light. This is the unseen architecture of existence, the subtle fabric that ancient mystics and modern intuitives alike have whispered about across the ages. And just as the wind can carry both the scent of blossoms and the sting of smoke, these invisible tides can bring nourishment or disturbance, depending on their nature and origin. The art of psychic self-defense is not some relic of superstition, nor is it the exclusive domain of seers and sages. It is the birthright of every being who has ever felt the weight of another's gaze like a hand pressing against their chest, who has walked into a room and sensed the lingering tension of an argument they did not witness, who has found themselves inexplicably drained after an encounter with a certain person or place. These are not mere coincidences or figments of an overactive imagination. They are the fingerprints of energy, the subtle exchanges that occur beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. To speak of shielding one's energy is to speak of boundaries, not the rigid walls of fear, but the intelligent membranes of discernment. Just as a cell knows what to absorb and what to repel to maintain its vitality, so too must we cultivate an inner knowing that allows life to flow through us without leaving us vulnerable to the unseen predators of the psychic landscape. These predators are not monsters in the literal sense, but energies, sometimes conscious, often unconscious, that siphon, manipulate, or distort the natural rhythms of our being. They may wear the guise of a charming stranger, a domineering colleague, or even the well-meaning but overbearing loved one who cannot help but project their unmet needs onto you. The ancients understood this interplay intimately. From the warding symbols etched into temple walls to the whispered incantations of shamans under starlit skies, humanity has long sought ways to guard the sanctity of the self against unseen intrusions. These practices were not born of paranoia, but of reverence, for the self, for the sacred, for the delicate balance between connection and autonomy. To shield one's energy is not to reject the world, but to engage with it from a place of sovereignty, to dance with life without being swept away by its undercurrents. Consider the metaphor of water. A still pond reflects the sky with perfect clarity, but let the surface be disturbed by careless hands, and the image shatters into chaos. Our energy fields are much the same. When unguarded, they become susceptible to the ripples and sometimes the storms of external influences. The practice of psychic self-defense is the art of maintaining that clarity, of knowing when to allow the waters to mingle and when to draw a sacred circle around oneself undisturbed. This is not a call to arm oneself against life, but to refine one's presence within it. The universe is a vast and interconnected tapestry, and to cut oneself off entirely would be to deny the very essence of being. But to move through the world without awareness of these subtle exchanges is to wander unshielded through a field of unseen arrows. The balance lies in discernment, in the cultivation of an inner sanctuary that remains inviolate even as you extend yourself into the world. So let us begin this journey not with fear, but with curiosity, with the understanding that to shield oneself is not an act of division, but of devotion. Devotion to the integrity of your own spirit, to the clarity of your own mind, and to the unassailable truth that you are both a part of this vast cosmos and a sovereign world unto yourself. To navigate the unseen terrain of psychic self-defense is to first recognize that energy is neither abstract nor elusive. It is the very fabric of our interactions, the silent language spoken between souls before words are ever formed. Think of it as the atmosphere, invisible yet undeniable in its presence. Just as the air carries whispers and storms alike, the energetic field around us transmits intention, emotion, and influence, often without our conscious awareness. The core of psychic self-defense lies not in building impenetrable walls, but in cultivating an inner compass, one that discerns the nourishing from the draining, the authentic from the manipulative, the sacred from the profane. At the heart of this practice is the understanding that all beings are, in essence, energetic entities. Every thought, emotion, and intention ripples outward, interacting with the fields of others in ways both seen and unseen. Some exchanges are harmonious, like the meeting of two streams merging into a river. Others are dissonant, leaving behind a residue that clings like static. The most potent forms of manipulation are rarely overt. They are the slow seep of doubt disguised as concern, the unspoken expectations that coil around your choices like vines, the emotional hooks buried in guilt or flattery. To shield oneself is not to reject connection, but to engage with it consciously, to recognize when an exchange is life-giving and when it is a subtle theft of vitality. One of the foundational truths in this art is the principle of resonance. Like tuning forks vibrating in sympathy, we naturally align with the frequencies we carry within. This is why certain people or environments leave us feeling inexplicably heavy or light. Their energy either harmonizes with ours or disrupts it. Manipulative energies often operate by attempting to shift your resonance, to pull you into a vibration that serves their needs rather than your own. The defense against this lies in sovereignty, the unshakable knowing of your own frequency and the ability to return to it no matter what winds blow against you. Another essential concept is that of the psychic membrane, the semi-permeable boundary that allows in what nurtures and filters out what harms. Unlike the rigid barriers of fear, which isolate and stagnate, a healthy psychic membrane breathes. It knows when to open, when to close, and when to transmute the energies that come its way. This is where many falter, for the modern world often teaches us to override our instincts in favor of politeness or endurance. We ignore the gut feeling that warns us of a person's hidden agenda, or we dismiss the fatigue that follows certain interactions as mere coincidence. But the body does not lie. It registers the unseen long before the mind catches up. Then there is the shadow aspect of energy exchange, the unconscious projections and attachments that tether us to others without consent. These are the invisible strings of obligation, the silent demands for attention or validation, the emotional vampirism that leaves one person replenished and the other depleted. To engage in psychic self-defense is to become aware of these dynamics, not with judgment, but with clarity. It is to recognize when you are being pulled into someone else's unresolved drama, or when your own energy is being siphoned to feed another's emptiness. The remedy is not blame, but boundary, the gentle, firm act of reclaiming your own space. Perhaps the most profound theme in this work is the idea that true protection begins within. No ritual or talisman can substitute for the power of a centered mind and a cleansed emotional body. Anxiety, unresolved trauma, and self-doubt are like cracks in the armor, places where external influences can easily enter. This is why so many ancient traditions pair protection practices with inner purification, meditation to still the mind, breathwork to clear the emotional body, and self-inquiry to illuminate the hidden vulnerabilities that make us susceptible to manipulation. The strongest shield is not the one forged in fear, but the one cultivated in self-awareness. Underlying all these concepts is a single unifying truth. Energy follows attention. Where you focus your awareness, your power flows. This is why manipulative forces, whether human or otherwise, seek to capture your attention, to hook you into their narrative. The practice of psychic self-defense, then, is as much about mastering your own focus as it is about repelling external forces. It is the art of directing your gaze with intention, of refusing to lend your energy to dramas that do not serve you, of choosing where to invest your presence with the discernment of a sage. These are not mere theories, but living principles, waiting to be embodied. They ask us to shift from passive recipients of energy to conscious participants in its flow, to become, in essence, the architects of our own energetic destiny. There is an old tale, whispered among desert mystics, about a wanderer who came upon a vast and shimmering oasis. Parched from his journey, he knelt to drink, only to find the waters receding before his lips could touch them. Again and again he tried, and each time the oasis seemed to retreat, leaving him more desperate. A voice then spoke from the wind. "You seek to take, but have you first learned to hold?" The wanderer, humbled, sat still at last. He cupped his hands before him, empty, and waited. Slowly the waters rose to meet him. This is the paradox of psychic self-defense. We cannot truly guard what we do not first possess. The oasis exists within, and only when we learn to contain our own essence can we discern when it is being drawn from us without consent. The symbolic narratives woven through ancient traditions often return to this theme, the necessity of inner fortitude before outer resistance. Consider the Norse myth of the god Odin, who hung himself upon the world tree for 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, in order to gain the wisdom of the runes. The act was one of extreme vulnerability, yet it was also the ultimate act of sovereignty, a willing surrender to the depths in order to reclaim power. The runes he won were not merely symbols of magic, but keys to shaping reality, and their power could only be claimed through the ordeal of self-mastery. So too with psychic self-defense. The greatest protections are not given but earned through the courageous work of inner knowing. Then there is the Hindu legend of the goddess Durga, who was created from the combined light of all the gods to face a demon that could not be slain by any single deity. Riding a lion, her many arms wielding weapons gifted by her divine kin, she stood between the world and chaos. Yet her true strength lay not in the weapons themselves, but in her unity of purpose, the unshakable alignment of her will with cosmic order. Modern seekers often misunderstand shielding as a scattering of defenses, a charm here, a visualization there, when true power lies in the unification of one's being. Like Durga, we are most protected not when we accumulate barriers, but when we become whole. The symbolism of armor appears across cultures, but its deepest meaning is often missed. The samurai's kabuto helmet frequently bore fearsome facial adornments, not merely to intimidate enemies, but to remind the wearer of the warrior spirit they must embody. The armor was useless without the Bushido code, the inner discipline that transformed metal into meaning. Similarly, Celtic lore speaks of the lorica, a breastplate woven from incantations and intention. St. Patrick's famous prayer, "Christ with me, Christ before me," was not a plea for external rescue, but a ritual of encircling oneself with sacred presence. These traditions all point to one truth: the most potent shields are those forged in the marriage of material and spiritual, outer form and inner conviction. Even nature offers its parables. The oyster, when irritated by a grain of sand, does not wage war against the ocean. Instead, it withdraws layer by layer, transforming the irritant into a pearl. This is the alchemy of psychic self-defense at its highest level. Not the rejection of discomfort, but the slow, patient transmutation of all that would disturb us into something of value. The world will always have its grains of sand. The art lies in deciding what we will make of them. Perhaps the most illuminating narrative comes from an obscure Gnostic text describing the mirror of the archons. In the story, soul-harvesting entities trap humans by showing them distorted reflections, images of themselves as small, guilty, and powerless. Those who believe the reflections become bound to them, while those who recognize the mirror as an illusion walk through it like mist. This is the essence of all psychic manipulation, the theft of one's self-perception. The counter is not force, but remembrance, an unshaking awareness of one's true nature beyond all false projections. These stories are not mere fables. They are maps disguised as myths, each containing the same essential wisdom, that the battlefield is first internal, and that the weapons which matter most are those of consciousness itself. To practice psychic self-defense is to engage in an ancient hero's journey, not to slay dragons in some distant land, but to confront the reflections that would have us forget our own sovereignty. The true measure of any esoteric wisdom lies in its ability to take root in the ordinary soil of daily life. Like a seed that carries within it the memory of the forest, the principles of psychic self-defense must find expression in the concrete moments where our energy meets the world. The tense family gathering, the crowded subway, the subtle power plays of the workplace, the intimate negotiations of love and friendship. To speak of shielding one's aura is poetic, but to stand unfazed when a toxic relative aims their barbs, or to leave a manipulative conversation without carrying its residue home, these are the real alchemies. Begin with the simple but radical act of noticing. Most energy theft occurs in the unnoticed spaces. The way your coworker's chronic complaining leaves you fatigued by midday, how a certain friend's concerned questions somehow always leave you doubting yourself. the heavy atmosphere that lingers in some rooms like stale perfume. These are not imaginary sensations, but real energetic transactions. The first practical step is to develop what the ancient Taoists called Shen Ting, spiritual listening. Before you can defend your energy, you must become sensitive to its fluctuations. Keep an inner ledger. What interactions leave you expanded and which leave you diminished? What environments feel like sunlight on skin and which feel like walking through cobwebs? This is not paranoia but precision, the same discernment you'd use to choose nourishing food over poison. Then there is the practice of psychic hygiene, as essential as washing your hands but far more neglected. Just as you wouldn't wear the same clothes for weeks without washing them, your energy field requires regular clearing. The simplest method is also the most ancient: water. A shower after difficult encounters isn't just metaphorical refreshment. It's a literal reset for your bioelectric field. Salt baths take this further, as sodium chloride has been proven to disrupt electromagnetic frequencies, a modern validation of what healers knew millennia ago. For immediate clearing, try the hand rinse. After tense interactions, run cold water over your wrists while visualizing discordant energy flowing down the drain. These are not superstitions but somatic interventions, ways to signal to your nervous system that the threat has passed. Boundaries emerge as the bedrock of practical defense, yet here we must distinguish between walls and membranes. A wall says never, a membrane says on my terms. The difference plays out in micro decisions. Turning off notifications during creative work isn't antisocial, it's selective permeability. Leaving a party when your social battery depletes isn't rude, it's energy stewardship. The Japanese concept of the intentional space between things, applies beautifully here. Just as traditional architecture uses sliding screens to modulate connection and privacy, your psychic boundaries should be dynamic. With draining individuals, practice the gray rock method, becoming as interesting as a stone to starve their drama. In charged environments, imagine yourself inside a sphere of violet light, not as a barrier against life, but as a filter that transforms what passes through. Technology presents new frontiers for energy intrusion. The same devices that connect us to the world also render us perpetually findable, a historically unprecedented vulnerability. The blue light from screens isn't the only emissions affecting us. The attention economy is quite literally a vampiric architecture designed to harvest our focus. Practical defenses here include turning your phone to grayscale to reduce dopamine hijacking, placing black tourmaline near routers, a modern adaptation of the old practice of placing protective stones at doorways, and most radically, culturing the habit of not reaching for a device when feeling emotionally raw. Your unfiltered emotional state is psychic data. Broadcasting it into the digital ether is like leaving your blood in a mosquito-filled jungle. Relationships demand their own protocols. Love often gets confused with energy merger, the dangerous idea that true connection means having no secrets, no separateness. In truth, the healthiest bonds are between two fortified beings, not two half-merged identities. Notice when support becomes enmeshment. Are you absorbing a partner's anxiety because you mistake compassion for osmosis? Is a friend's constant crisis solving actually a covert way to avoid their own life? The test is simple. After time together, do you feel more like yourself or less? Teach people how to access you, not with ultimatums, but through consistent energy patterns. Like training a muscle, others will adapt to your presence when you stop rewarding their intrusions with attention. Workplaces are modern battlegrounds for psychic integrity. Open-plan offices, mandatory team building, and the cult of perpetual availability create environments where personal energy is communal property. Counter this by claiming micro-sanctuaries, a screensaver of protective symbols, the ancient Hamsa hand or Sri Yantra work across traditions, headphones playing 432 Hz tones, the frequency shown to reduce cortisol, or even just the disciplined use of posture. Sitting with spine straight and feet grounded signals your system to maintain sovereignty. During meetings where agendas feel coercive, press your tongue to the roof of your mouth, a qigong technique to anchor energy, and imagine roots descending through the floor. You'd be stunned how these invisible acts shift power dynamics. Ultimately, The most practical tool is the disciplined imagination. Visualization isn't escapism, it's neural programming. When you consistently imagine yourself surrounded by golden light, you're not pretending. You're creating a cognitive pathway that eventually becomes your default state. Studies on athletes prove mental rehearsal changes physical performance. The same applies to energy management. Spend 5 minutes each morning running through scenarios, that nosy neighbor, the gaslighting boss, the emotional blackmailer, and see yourself responding from calm center. Your subconscious will follow the script you rehearse. These practices aren't about withdrawing from the world, but engaging with it at a higher fidelity, where you stop confusing endurance for strength, and where protection becomes not an act of fear, but the necessary foundation for fearless connection. There comes a moment in every seeker's journey when the theoretical becomes tactile, when the shimmering concepts of energy and boundaries and sovereignty cease to be abstract philosophies and instead take root in the marrow of lived experience. This is the alchemy of true psychic self-defense. Not just knowing, but becoming. The shift from understanding these principles to embodying them is akin to the difference between reading about fire and feeling its warmth between your hands. The transformation occurs when you realize that every interaction, every environment, every relationship is an opportunity to practice the sacred art of energetic integrity. Consider the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly, an often used metaphor, but one that holds particular resonance here. The caterpillar does not simply grow wings, it dissolves into primordial soup within the chrysalis, its very cells breaking down before reorganizing into a new form. So too with the journey of psychic self-mastery. The old patterns of people-pleasing, of porous boundaries, of unconscious absorption must first be dissolved before the wings of discernment can unfurl. This dissolution is not destruction, but liberation. It asks you to release the comforting familiarity of energetic victimhood, the habitual stance of being acted upon by the world, and to claim instead the mantle of conscious creator. The call to psychic self-defense is ultimately a call to radical self-honesty. It demands that you interrogate the subtle contracts you've signed with the world. Where have you traded your peace for approval, your clarity for belonging, your vitality for the illusion of safety? These are the invisible shackles that no external shield can dissolve. The true work happens in the quiet moments when you choose to stop leaking energy into the black holes of others' dramas, when you decline to internalize projections, when you refuse to let your worth be defined by anything outside the sanctuary of your own soul. This path is not one of isolation, but of sacred selectivity. Just as the heart regulates its openings and closings to sustain the body's flow, your energy field must learn the rhythm of wise engagement. There will be those who mistake your boundaries for rejection, your discernment for coldness. Let them. The world does not need more people who have sacrificed their radiance at the altar of others' comfort. What it needs, desperately, are those who have done the interior work required to stand as unshakable conduits of clean, clear energy. In a time where manipulation is industrialized, from advertising to politics to social media algorithms, your sovereignty becomes an act of quiet revolution. Imagine a future version of yourself, one who has mastered these arts. How do they move through the world? Not with armor plating that deadens life's vibrancy, but with a permeable luminescence that transforms toxins into wisdom as effortlessly as trees convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. They are neither predator nor prey in the unseen wars of energy, but a sovereign entity, capable of deep connection precisely because they cannot be covertly co-opted. This is your birthright, not the anxious vigilance of the hunted, but the grounded power of the rooted tree that bends in storms but does not break. The tools are now in your hands. The awareness has been kindled. What remains is the courage to apply them consistently, not as occasional remedies, but as the new foundation of your being. Start small, but start. The next time you feel drained after a conversation, pause and ask what was taken, what was given. The next time you enter a room humming with tension, notice where in your body you absorb it. Each conscious choice is a stitch in the luminous tapestry of your resilience. This is not the end, but a threshold. Beyond it lies a life where your energy is no longer a currency for others to spend, but a sacred trust to be stewarded. The path of psychic self-defense is, at its core, the path of coming home, to yourself, to your power, to the unassailable truth that you were never meant to be a vessel for others' chaos, but a wellspring of your own divine clarity. The call has been sounded. The only question that remains is this: will you answer?